Click the link in the description to go to aoa.com, the best place to buy Skull and Bones silver cheap. Use code DTG for 3% off at checkout. Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Skull and Bones, and today we're going to be doing the best build that I've come up with so far for the Snow, which we're calling the toughest ship in the game, so I guess that's the build. And so, I mean, it should be obvious that the reason why we're calling it that is obviously the Snow has the best hull health and also a ridiculous bracing advantage over most other ships. So just in a pure survivability, as long as you're actually paying attention and bracing before you get hit, the Snow can just take a punishment that none of the other top tier ships can come anywhere near. So I decided to make this one my specialized fort besieging one. So I really like the Sam book. That's become like my definite go-to for most ship-to-ship combat because it's just a DPS machine, and I've already made a build for that just works out phenomenally well, and I've been loving using it. So that's already on the channel, so if you want to check that out, check that out. Today's isn't DPS, it's specifically for surviving the massive amount of firepower you're under when you're attacking forts and inflicting as much damage as possible on those forts. So that's going to be how we look at that. So I guess we'll just start off like I always do with these builds with a quick little overview of the ship. So here we have the Snow. That's our little picture of how ours looks right now. As far as details about the Snow, how it goes, it's a tank type, so it's specialized in bracing against incoming damage. We've already talked about that. It just makes it so you can actually take quite the pounding. Our perk for this one is Tenacity, which says recovers brace strength at 4% per second, while bracing increases brace strength by 50% and brace strength recovery by 150%. Basically, this perk is all about bracing. So like I said, if you're not bracing when you use the Snow, you're not actually using it to anywhere near its full potential. So you're just kind of wasting your time. If you don't brace when you use ships in combat, then the Snow is not the right ship for you because that's what makes it so good. If you don't like bracing in combat, then the Brigantine or the Bark is probably a much better bet for you. But that's our perk for this one. As far as base stats on this one, we have a base ship strength of 5, hull health of 50,000, which is nice and high, brace strength of 25,000, which brings us up to 75,000 when we're bracing, which is great. Regular speed of 10 knots and a trimming speed of 13 knots. So 13 knots is considerably slower than several other ships in the top tier classes, but that's trimming speed with the wind. When you're sailing into the wind and everything, the Snow actually has a significant speed advantage because, for example, the Brigantine and the Sambuck both slow down to 8 knots when you're sailing into the wind, whereas the Snow and the Bark have a speed advantage into the wind. Our cargo capacity is 80,000, which is super high. That's like, I want to say it's the best cargo capacity in the entire game. I have just double checked, and it is indeed the best one in the game, which I thought it was. So that's all of our stats. Now let's go into how I've actually designed the build on this ship. All right, starting it off with armor. Any top tier armor is going to be a great choice. I have the Royal Custodian equipped on here just because it works really well. It's got great perks to it. It obviously has a tremendous amount of damage. If you have the Ouroboros or anything like that, or the Wailing Ward or the Black Prince, all of those are going to be great armor options. But whatever you have, the best armor you've got is what you're going to want to put on here because that's always the case with every ship in the game. As for our weapons, there's probably lots of different ways you could go, but I tried balancing it between we have basically one or two main weapons that we like to use against the forts, and the rest is just to make it so we're not totally useless in ship-to-ship combat. So our bow weapon on here, I have the Chalet 3. It's one of the best torpedoes in the game, and it works really well for this ship. So the Snow's relatively maneuverable. It's got a decent speed, so I like to stay mobile in combat when I'm using it. The torpedo works really well for that. Now, firing it off the bow, you're firing less torpedoes at a time, so your damage potential isn't as high as if you have it on, say, a broadside, but it still is very accurate, very long range. It's great for initiating fights because it's got a high accuracy at a decent range. Once you start getting into combat, you do have to remember to lead your opponents, or it is relatively easy to miss, but the damage output is extremely high, and it does explosive and flooding damage, which is super useful. That's one thing you'll notice. We definitely focus a lot on flooding damage for this build, because that's one of the things I like using it for. I like using it as a chase ship to bring down other ships that try to focus on speed. So my counter to a Brigantine isn't actually another Brigantine. It's oftentimes the Snow set up with flooding weapons, so I can slow that ship down, and then I can destroy it in a one-on-one fight. If your strategy is good, you can defeat a Snow with a Brigantine in a one-on-one fight. But if it's not good, then the Snow has every advantage against the Brig as soon as you've slowed it down. So I like the Chalet 3 as our front weapon. Our broadsides, there's two ways to go with the broadsides. So the way that I went with this, because I have these, is the carronades. They're the new lightweight cannons that have been added with the Smuggler's Pass, the current Smuggler's Pass. These are great weapons, and they work really well for this build. So they're a culverin type. They have a faster reload speed than regular culverins, but slightly less range. I find that doesn't make a huge difference because I don't really use these for super long-range combat when I'm playing with this build. They've got the Riptide perk, which adds 50% of damage as severe damage when target is flooded. That is really, really overpowered. This is something a lot of people misunderstand. When you use this one against a ship that you're actively in combat with, they cannot heal. So we're dealing lots and lots of flooding damage with this build. This adds 50% of that flooding damage is going to be added into severe damage. So we lower the amount that the ship can actually heal by using repair kits. So this is great for taking out enemies that like to heal against you, namely other players. Flooding 1 adds 10% of damage as flooding damage, so that helps with all of our flooding stuff. You can see our damage per shot is 1025, and our flooding is plus 102, so that's huge. It's really, really a great weapon, one of the best broadside weapons in the game at the moment. So that's one way to go with this build. I like to do the carronade on both sides if you have it. If you don't have it, the Flooding Demi-Cannon 3 is the next best bet. Now, the Flooding Demi-Cannon 3 does even more flooding damage, and obviously, since you're firing all your cannons at once, if you get a nice close broadside, you can deal a tremendous amount of damage all at once and almost completely flood the ship in one barrage, oftentimes. And so these are a great option. The only weakness they have over the carronade, well, I mean, we've talked about all the strengths of the carronade, but the major weakness is they have significantly less range. Our range with this is 250 meters. The carronade is 600 meters. So they do kind of the same job, but the Flooding Demi-Cannon is all at once, and you have to be up much closer. Like I said, they do more flooding damage in one barrage than your carronades will, but I find them to be a little bit less versatile, which is why I think the carronades are better for broadsides. But if you don't have those, haven't unlocked them, but you do have 2 Flooding Demi-Cannon 3s, then put the Flooding Demi-Cannon 3s on, because it'll be really great for the build anyway. For our stern gun, lots of ways you can go. I like having, especially on a ship where I don't have any bombards anywhere else, I like having a bombard. And so we have the Dardanelles gun because I'm not using it on any of my other top tier builds, and it's one of the best weapons in the game as far as power goes. Regular bombards fire one at a time. It's important to remember the Dardanelles gun fires all at once, so it is a little bit easier to miss with your shots on this one because you don't have the time to correct, but it is super effective for damage, and this comes in handy for both ship-to-ship combat when we're being chased, and of course, for the purpose of the ship, which is besieging forts. So the Dardanelles gun or another high-power bombard like a Fire Bombard 3 or something like that is what we want on the stern. And then lastly, our auxiliary weapon, probably the cornerstone of the entire build, we have rockets. And now, you could use, arguably for this build, any rockets you want. Personally, for me, the Termites 3 is the way to go. They've got a huge bonus against structures, which helps them in a siege. You can see we've got a 50% increase to damage against structures. They have a slightly higher arc. They deal a tremendous amount of damage. You can see a full barrage of this is 16,000 damage. You do go through a lot of rockets with these. That's one thing that a lot of people misunderstand or they forget about. They're used to using a mortar, so you bring 200 mortar rounds with you and that'll last you forever. With rockets, you got to bring way more than that because it fires a ton of them all at once. But that's all the weapons for this build. And then quickly just going through our furniture because there's not too much to talk about here. Signal Gong increases our damage by 15% after a crew attack for 30 seconds. I do a lot of crew attacks with this build, so it's great to have that extra damage. Then a follow-up on that, the Spiked Warhorn. It increases the charge rate of crew attacks by 10%, allows us to do more crew attacks, so those two kind of work really well with each other as long as you are engaging in crew attacks. Then we have the Rocket Works 1, which increases the elemental damage multiplier of rockets by 19%. That's just going to make our rockets that much more effective in combat. And then the last one we have is one that you can go multiple different ways. I have the Culverin Works 1 on here since I'm using Culverin type cannons. If you're using demi cannons, then obviously something for demi cannons will be good, or if you want to make your survivability a little bit higher, you can always go with the double planked hull or something like that. Or if you want to be able to repair your own severe damage, the Maintenance Forge is also a great option, so you can repair your severe damage while out of combat. But that is the entire build for this ship, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. Trust me, this is a great build. I'm going to show you some footage now, some combat footage of this ship in action against some forts. I hope you enjoyed that, but that's all for today. We'll see you next time.
down that road.
Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.